live in interesting times. Today's stories. The China-Africa Summit rejects debt criticism. Britain's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt says there will be no stone unturned to secure Nazanin Ratcliffe release. UN urges Putin and Erdogan to talk to avert an Idlib bloodbath. Democrats demand adjournment of the Kavanaugh hearing. Californian firefighters raise alarm on mental health. Reuters denounces false charges by Myanmar. Plus, get caffeinated at a Houston cat adoption cafe. Hello everyone, I am Sarah Nackman bringing you stories from around the globe. And this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Chinese and African officials on Tuesday rejected criticism of Beijing's death-laden overseas development projects as they wrapped up a summit that included a new $60 billion assistance pledge for the continent. President Xi Jinping hosted leaders from across Africa amid criticism that his country's Belt and Road Globe Trade Infrastructure project is worsening debt problems in some countries. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who handed over the co-chairmanship to Senegal's President Macky Sall, said another achievement at the summit was an agreement to work hard to increase Africa's value-added exports to China.
Ce que nous faisons avec la Chine, j'insiste là-dessus, est parfaitement maîtrisé, y compris le volet financier, le volet de la dette. Nous ne devons pas avoir la conscience perturbée par les critiques faites sur la nature de nos relations avec la Chine.
For his part, Xi said the summit opened a new chapter in the history of China-Africa relations.
会议顺利完成了既定目标，中非领导人在所有重大问题上都达成了重要共识，发出了共同声音。北京峰会取得圆满成功，收获的是沉甸甸的成果。
He had called on Monday for the two sides to work to balance trade relations, noting that Africa exports raw materials to China, while Chinese factories send finished products back to the continent.
We agreed to work hard to increase Africa's value-added exports to China. And we are particularly pleased that President Xi and the government of the People's Republic of China is quite open and they welcome this development.
Britain's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt says the UK government will continue to leave no stone unturned in an effort to secure the release of Nazanin Ratcliffe, a British-Iranian woman who has been in prison in Tehran for more than 2 years following a conviction of sedition. Nazanin Ratcliffe was freed for 3 days on Thursday.
Mr. Speaker, the detention of Nazanin Ratcliffe is a gross injustice. She is innocent. She's separated from her 4-year-old daughter and her husband, and we will continue to leave no stone unturned to get her home. Well, we absolutely will keep going with a whole range of activities, as well as my right honourable friend's visit. The Prime Minister spoke to President Rouhani on the 10th of May. I spoke to Foreign Minister Zarif on the 24th of August, and I hope to meet him at the United Nations General Assembly, and I'm willing to go to Tehran as well if that's necessary.
Nazanin Ratcliffe was reunited with members of her family, including her young daughter, outside the Iranian capital after her surprise release. Her husband, Richard Ratcliffe, said in a statement, Nazanin was released from Evan prison on furlough this morning. Initially, the release is for 3 days. Her lawyer is hopeful this can be extended. Ratcliffe said his wife, who has denied all charges filed against her in Iran, was currently with her parents and their 4-year-old daughter Gabriella in Damavand, a mountain resort near Tehran. According to a statement released by the Free Nazanin campaign run by her husband, she said of the reunion, "I cried so much, I felt so overwhelmed." Her husband voiced thanks to those in Tehran and London involved in making the release happen, including Britain's new Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt. Her husband said, This was a very happy surprise after a number of false dawns recently, which had been increasingly unsettling. Hunt, who met Ratcliffe in London earlier this month after he was appointed as Britain's top diplomat in July, called her temporary release really good news and paid tribute to the tireless campaigning by husband Richard and her friends. He wrote on Twitter, "But being in prison at all is gross injustice, and she must be permanently released, for which every effort will continue." Zaghari Ratcliffe, who works for the Thomson Reuters Foundation, the media's organization's philanthropic arm, was arrested on Tehran airport in April 2016. She is serving a 5-year jail sentence for sedition, a charge she has always contested. Hunt's predecessor, Boris Johnson, came under heavy criticism after appearing to jeopardize her defense last year by saying she was training journalists during her visit, something her employer and family strongly deny. Johnson later clarified his remarks, saying it was clear that she was only on holiday. UN Syria envoy Staffan de Mistura and the head of the UN's Humanitarian Task Force for Syria, Jan Egeland, held a joint press conference in Geneva on recommendation to avoid further conflict between regime and rebel forces in the Idlib region.
And we have been hearing indications through the press that the government was putting a deadline around the 10th of September. That's why the sense of urgency. That's why our appeal, if I may, to President Putin and to President Erdogan to talk and go beyond perhaps technical discussions and find a solution which can be a soft solution to this crisis.
Up next, Democrats demand adjournment of the Kavanaugh hearing. Californian firefighters raise alarm on mental health. Reuters denounces false charges by Myanmar. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return in a moment. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. The confirmation hearing for U.S. President Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee quickly descended into chaos Tuesday, with opposition Democrats demanding an adjournment and protests repeatedly interrupting the proceedings.
Extend a very warm welcome
we have not
to
been
Judge
given
Kavanaugh,
an opportunity to have a meaningful
his wife,
hearing on
Ashley,
this nominee.
their 2 daughters,
Mr. Chairman,
their
I
extended
agree with my
family and
colleague,
friends,
Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman,
Judge
we
Kavanaugh's
received
many law
42,000
clerks,
documents that we haven't
and
been able
everyone else
to
joining us
review last
today.
night, and we believe this hearing
I
should be
know this is an
postponed.
exciting day.
We have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise.
Chairman,
and
regular
defend,
order is called for.
which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms.
Well,
and Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this hearing.
okay.
As fires continue to ravage California, the state's some 4,000 firefighters are on the brink of exhaustion. The long hours on the front lines of disaster and the increasing number of deaths, including some firefighters themselves, can have damaging effects on the mental health of these emergency personnel. California has decided to face this epidemic head-on. Matt Schobert was severely injured fighting a blaze 4 years ago and was forced to retire early from the San Diego Fire Department. This marked the beginning of his long battle with depression.
My career was everything to me. It wasn't just my job, it was my hobby, it was my identity. At that point, I became suicidal.
He is not the only one. Some of his comrades suffer in silence, and some end up committing suicide. Since the beginning of the year, 43 firefighters in the U.S. have committed suicide, 8 times the number of firefighters killed battling blazes.
Masculine and macho world. So it's very dangerous for them to show any kind of a chink in their armor. This is a group who traditionally, over time, the legacy has been, if you're weak, we push you out.
Fighting forest fires such as those that have ravaged the western regions of the United States this summer means days that are both exhausting and interminable, while the death and destruction weighs heavily on the minds of those tasked with stemming the flames.
We've got firefighters working 12 to 36 hours straight on the fire line. So they're physically exhausted, they're emotionally exhausted because we've been killing firemen in these fires. Firemen have been dying. We're not superheroes. Everybody has a limit.
California, one of the worst-hit states, has seen 5 firefighters die battling the flames so far this year. According to official figures across the whole country, that number rises to 64. Reuters on Monday hit out at the jailing of 2 of their reporters for 7 years for an alleged breach of Myanmar's Official Secrets Act during an investigation into a massacre of Rohingya men.
Today is a sad day for Myanmar, Reuters journalists Walon and Chaw So-u, and the press everywhere. These 2 admirable reporters have already spent more than 8 months in prison on false charges designed to silence their reporting and intimidate the press. Without any evidence of wrongdoing, and in the face of compelling evidence of a police setup, today's ruling condemns them to the continued loss of their freedom and condones the misconduct of security forces. This is a major step backward in Myanmar's transition to democracy, cannot be squared with the rule of law or freedom of speech, and must be corrected by the Myanmar government as a matter of urgency. We will not wait while Walon and Chaw So-u suffer this injustice, and will evaluate how to proceed in the coming days, including whether to seek relief in an international forum.
Coming up, get cat-finated at a Houston cat adoption cafe. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return shortly. This is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. I am Sarah Natman. Eagle News correspondent Krista Venice-Tapok tells of how a cup of coffee and some therapeutic time with furry friends make this local cafe a spot for cat adoption. Take a look.
Are you someone who loves coffee? How about cats? Well, El Gato Coffee House is a place for you. El Gato is a cafe and adoption center partnered with Friends for Life, whose mission is to provide a comfortable environment for adoptable cats until they find their forever home. If you are not looking to adopt, guests can enjoy cat therapy, which also helps socialize the cats. Some activities include yoga with cats, Saturday morning cartoons, Meowvie night, and kitty crafts. Students are also encouraged to do work or to study here while getting moral support from these cute and lovable felines. Their coffee selection is also something to try, with drinks such as lavender mojito and milk kitty.
A friend of mine, she's a kennel worker, she's mentioned this place and I was like, dude, perfect, a cat cafe, yeah. So I just started working here and I basically watch them if there's anything weird going on with their health or anything like that. If you're looking to adopt, this is a great place to come. You can sit around with them, get to know them, and get them to know you. A lot of these cats, because they come from shelter settings, it's hard to get that personal one-on-one attention in a shelter whenever you can come in here and just sit with them. And they do come from a no-kill shelter, so everybody is, you're kind of being able to help that whole no-kill shelter side, and we're like the middleman, pretty much.
Reporting from Houston, Texas, I'm Krista Venice, your EBC correspondent, and we are 1 with 25.
Thanks, Krista. That is today's Eagle News Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our website at Eaglenews.PH and EagleNewsLive.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. On behalf of Eagle News Washington, D.C., thank you for watching. I am Sarah Natman. I am 1 with 25.